Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and selamat sejahtera. So, we are going to proceed to our syllabus of Administrative Office Management. Previously in chapter 1, we have learned about the principle of Administrative Office Management. Okay, so let's recap what we have learned in chapter 1. So, in chapter 1, we have learned about the definition of administrative office management, and then we also know about the role of the office, and then in chapter 1 we have learned about the administrative office management function and as well as the objective. And we also learn about the administrative office manager. So in chapter 1 we have learned about the responsibilities of the management function. We also know about we have learned about the job responsibility within each of the 4 functions. And in chapter 1, if you can recall back, we have learned about the skills in administrative office management that include the conceptual, the human and also the technical skill. And we also know what are the challenges facing by the administrative office manager, as well as the qualification and the professional and educational background for administrative office manager. Okay, so that's what we have learned in chapter 1. It's quite a long chapter, but now in chapter 2 we are going to learn about the organizational principles of management. Okay, for this topic we have referring to the Quibble page 20 to 24 as well as page 32 and 35. Okay, so let's proceed to the next part. Something wrong with my slide. Okay, so in this chapter, in the end of this chapter, you are going to able to explain the management functions and principle and relate the management principle to the activities and the role of an office supervisor in the present organizational environment. Okay, so what we are going to learn in chapter 2, we are going to have 4 sub-content for chapter 2. So the first one is we are going to learn about the organizational principles of management. So we are going to cover this chapter in video part 1. And then we are going to learn about the benefits of centralization and decentralization of a managerial authority. I do believe you have learned about the centralized and decentralized during semester 3 for the subject of records management. And the third part, we are going to learn about the physical centralization and decentralization of office operation before the last subtopic, which is the informal organization. So now, let's proceed to the next part. Okay, so I'm going to change my video actually. Okay, so for this part, we are going to learn the principle of management. So the first thing that you need to know is the basic principle of management. So the basic principle actually a basic guideline that are useful when designing and structuring various organizational activities. Okay, the same thing goes to any organization, whether a big or a small organization. Okay, they must provide a certain guideline to be followed by their employees. Okay, the next part is the principle play an important role in guiding organizational toward the successful achievement of their objective. Okay, that's why any organization, whether it is the big one or the small one, they need to have this basic principle of management and the guideline. Okay, so I'm going to proceed to the next part. Okay, so we have 8 organizational principles of management. Okay, so again, this one is referring to from the book Quibble on the page 20 and 24, and as well we refer to the Collars and Keeling page 26 and 33. So what are 8 organizational principle of management? The first one is the define of objective. The second one is a span of control. The third one is interrelated function. Number 4 is the change of a command. And number 5 is the unity of command. 6 is authority and responsibility. And the next part is the work assignment. And lastly is the employee empowerment. So these are 8 organizational principles of management that we are going to learn. Okay, so after this I'm going to explain one by one this each organizational principle of management. So let's proceed to the first one. The first one is a definition of objective. So the objective of an organization and all of its divisions must be clearly defined and understood. Okay, so an objective is actually a desired goal or a target or an aim. Okay, so I'm going to change the perspective for you as a student. So you as a student, you have your own objective, or in other words, your target or aim for every semester. Maybe you want to get the NA, you want to get the 4 flat. Okay, you want to score the result successfully. Okay, so this example from the perspective of you as an individual, as a student. But the same thing goes to the organization. So any organization, whether a small one or a big one, private or public, they have their own objective, desired goal that they want to achieve. Okay, so generally the term goals and objective are used interchangeably, as both refer to the outcomes that result from the expenditure of purposeful effort. Okay, so objectives tend to be more meaningful when the first one, they are written in the context of outcome. The second one, the objective tend to be meaningful when they are understood and acceptable by all employees. And the third one, the objective tend to be more meaningful when it contains measurable or quantifiable elements. And the next one is it contains a time reference. Time reference, for example, how long you are going to achieve that objective, whether it is a long time reference, which is 2 to 3 years, or within 5 years. Okay, that one what we call the long term, or the short term maybe in 1 year or within a year. And last one, objectives tend to be more meaningful when they are challenging but attainable. Okay, so these are the first principle of management, which is the definition of objective. Okay, and then objective missing one or more of these characters tend to be ineffective, often producing mediocre to poor result. Okay, so objective can be either short. Okay, short is actually, the term is within 1 to 5 years. Okay, so this one what we call the short term, or it can be the long term, maybe 5 years and above, maybe 10 years. Okay, so the same thing goes to you as an individual. Maybe you have in another 5 years what you want to be in another 5 years, or in another 10 years. 10 years we can call it as a long term range. Okay, so some objective will involve only few of the organization's employees, whereas others involve virtually its entire workforce. Okay, so this is the definition of objective. Next, we are going to continue to the next principle of management, which is the span of control. Are you familiar with the word span of control? So, for effective supervision and leadership, the number of employees reporting to one supervisor should be limited to a manageable number. So, number of employees who are directly supervised by one person. Okay, so in other words, how many each supervisor can manage his or her employees. Okay, so what are the factors should be considered for determining an appropriate span of control? The first one, we need to consider the factors. It depends on the nature of that work performed. The second one, it depends on the capability of that supervisor as well as the workers. And the third one is the leadership style. The fourth is the amount of latitude extended to that subordinates. And last one is the nature of interpersonal relationships. Okay, these are the factors should be considered when you are going to determine the appropriate span of control. Again, span of control is the number of employees who are directly supervised by one person. Okay, so this is an example of a narrow span of control. It's still span of control, but the narrow one. I'm going to use my highlighter. Okay, I'm going to choose the green color. So you can see this one, the narrow span of control. Okay, so each employee holding a position is responsible for at least two others. Okay, you can see this one, manager one have 3 employees. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And his employee, one of his employee, the blue one, you can see this one, the blue one, able to manage another 2 employees under him or her. Okay, so these are the narrow span of control. Okay, so one manager, again, how the numbers of employees can be supervised by one employee, one supervisor. Okay, so these are the wide span. So I'm going to give you a comparison. These are the narrow span, and this one is the wide span. Okay, the difference with this one is the narrow and wide. Okay, you can see this one is wider compared to the narrow one. Okay, you can see that this manager able to supervise 6 employees. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so this one, each employee holding a position is authority of responsible for at least 5 others. Okay, but again, one of his employee, the blue one, able to supervise another 5 employees under him or her. Okay, so these are the comparison of narrow span of control and wide span of control. The numbers of employee he or she can supervise. But again, you need to know the span of control is numbers of employee can be supervised by one supervisor. Okay, so I'm going to go to the third part. So the third part is interrelated functions. So this one is operational areas that comprise an organization, including accounting, finance, production, sale, and so forth. Okay, so these are what we call the functional areas. So this one become interrelated or intensively interrelated, the system approach. Okay, so the problems that emerge in one functional area will often expand or can influence other areas. So the interrelated nature of this area requires that the objective of one area be consistent with those of other area. For example, I'm going to give you a very simple example. If you ITM in any cawangan, okay, you enter Terengganu, okay, we have a certain department like HEA, HEP, unit college, and then what you have a treasury. So this department, they have their own function, but again, they are interrelated to each other. For example, if you want to get any information about the student, you can get the information about the student academic from the HEA. And then if you want to get the information about the student, especially when the student stay in the college, you can refer to the HEP. And then you want to get the information about the same student, about his fees to the UiTM, you can refer to the treasury of UiTM. So again, this department, even though they have their own different function, but again they are interrelated to each other. Okay, so the next part is change of command. So what is change of command? Change of command is organizational principle that identifies who report to whom within an organization. Previously, we have shown you the span of control, the organization chart. How many numbers of the supervisor can supervise. Okay, but this one is who report to whom within an organization. Okay, so this one is a chain or series of supervisor subordinate relationship. Okay, so lack of adherence, which is the loyalty to the change, may cause the communication process to break down. So this why the communication is very important between the supervisor and subordinate relationship. Okay, simple chain are more effective than complex ones because they are more readily understood, and because the communication move through simple change more rapidly than the complex change. Okay, so the change of command is actually provide the benefit of being more clear cut and definite than their complex counterpart. Okay, so these are the change of command. Okay, you can see that Joseph her is a fire chief department. So Jeffrey G. King and this one they have a vacant, they need to report to the Joseph. But again, you can see under the Joseph, okay, under the Jeffrey G. King, you can see that this is Daniel G. Person and also Chris Schimmer. So these both two person are going to report to Jeffrey G. King. On the other hand, David, Richard and Kevin, they need to report to their chief deputy. But again, you do not have chief deputy, it is a vacant, empty there, so they can report directly to the Joseph. Okay, so this is what we call change of command. Who report to whom, and Jeffrey G. King must report to the Joseph. Okay, so next part is unity of command. So what is unity of command? Each employee should receive orders from and be responsible to only one supervisor. So, or in other words, if more than one, likely to be put into a precarious, risky situation, especially when receiving conflicting orders or directives from each supervisor. So in other words, when you have two different supervisors, so it's pretty hard for you to do your work. Why? Because maybe your supervisor have different conflict of ideas. Okay, that's why unity of command is receive order and responsible to only one supervisor. Directly you do your job according to your one supervisor. Okay, so the absence of unity of command produces job related frustration, job satisfaction and loss of morale. Why? Because when you have two supervisors, sometimes when they're giving you a different order, it will lead to a problem to you to complete that job, because they do not have the same direction, okay, or the same instruction giving to you to complete your job. Okay, so that's why the importance of unity of command. The next part is authority and responsibility. So authority is actually refers to the ability of an individual to inform others of what he or she expect them to do and expect they will do as us. Okay, this is what the definition of authority. And the responsibility is actually refers to the obligation to that those who being asked by a manager or a supervisor to do something will in fact do as they been asked. Okay, responsibility, in other words, you must do what your supervisor or your manager asks you to do, and authority is what you expect him or he to do. Okay, Okay, so what are the reasons why supervisor avoid delegating authority? The first one may be the supervisor lack confidence in their subordinates. Okay, he or she do not trust his subordinate to complete their job, or they believe that subordinate do not have the capability to complete their job. Okay, number two, maybe lack understanding of the nature of the supervisory role. Okay, so this one is the problem with the supervisor. Okay, the third one is believe that unless they do the work, they cannot stay on top of the situation. And lastly, why supervisors avoid delegating authority is because they lack technical competence. Okay, technical competence is one of the skill. So we have learned about this one in chapter 1 about the human skill, technical skill, and okay, these are the required skill by the AOM. Okay, the next one is the work assignment. So what is work assignment? Each individual's special strength and talent should be considered. This one can help assure that each person's work assignment is consistent with his or her ability and interest. Okay, so the absence of clearly defined job duties and responsibility make it more difficult to hold an employee accountable for unsatisfactory performance. Okay, so in chapter later on, we are going to learn about the job specification and job description, so that you clearly know what are your job duties and responsibilities. Okay, any individual work assignment should be determined before he or she is hired. So this one is very important. Before you apply any job applicants, you need to make sure what are the job description and job specification of the job that you are going to apply. Okay, and defining a new employee's job duties and responsibilities when he is on the job is not recommended. Okay. Okay, so we are going to continue to the last one is the employee empowerment. So this is the last part in our principle of management. Okay, so the employee empowerment. When we talk about the word empowerment, it related to you give what we call your confidence, or your you are reliable or able to believe that your subordinate able to do the job. Okay, so when employees are empowered, they are encouraged to participate as much as possible in making decisions that affect all aspects of their job task. Okay, for example, when you are outstation or you have some other job, then your subordinate need what we call to make a decision. You empower your subordinate to make that decision. You empower. Okay, you give what we call you give a trust to your subordinate to make any decision without notify you. Okay, so these are the these, or in other words, they are given the ability and authority without their supervisor's approval. So this is what we call employee empowerment. If you want to wait for your supervisor, for example, your supervisor may be quite busy, is not currently in what we call able to be in office or outstation, so this will affect the job process. Okay, so why they do this one? Because they want to take action that will lead to high quality work and performance. Okay, so this is the last part of the organizational principle of management. We have 8, and the last one is employee empowerment. So that's it for video chapter 2 part 1. We are going to proceed after this chapter 2 part 2 and part 3, and thank you.